Good evening, my little creatures of the night. Mr. Wendigo back again, and boy, have I got a tale that'll leave you silent with terror tonight. The Northern Rockies, October, where the aspens have dropped their leaves and the first snows dust the peaks, where search and rescue officers know that when the forest goes quiet, something's hunting. Wayne Stetson has spent 17 years pulling lost hikers out of these mountains. He knows which silences are natural, and which ones mean you're already being watched. Tonight, 2 hikers have gone missing, and the forest has stopped making sound. This is your late night creature feature. When the world goes quiet, it's because something doesn't want you to hear it coming. Before we begin, where are you listening from tonight? In the woods? Driving down dark roads? Safe at home with the lights on? Drop a comment. I like knowing who's out there in the dark with me. Now then, let's talk about the things that hunt in silence. The red silence. The ridge trail should have been alive with sound. Wayne Stetson knew that like he knew his own heartbeat. 24 years in these mountains, first as a kid tagging along behind his old man, then 17 more as SAR, and he'd learned to read the Rockies like other people read newspapers. Even in October, when the aspens had dropped their leaves and the first snows dusted the peaks, the forest carried noise, pine branches creaking under frost, squirrels chattering warnings, the distant rush of snowmelt streams cutting through granite. But that morning, stepping off the snow-packed service road onto the familiar trail, something was wrong. The world felt tense, held breath. Wayne stopped, let his pack settle against his shoulders, and just listened. The air was cold enough to sting the inside of his nose. Weak sun filtered through thin clouds, painting everything colorless. The pines rose black and still. Nothing. Not even wind. The hell? His own voice sounded too loud, like shouting in a library. 2 hikers, married couple from Fort Collins, had failed to return the night before. Their Subaru sat in the lower lot, covered in a light dusting of powder. No tracks leading away except their own boot prints heading up trail. Wayne had rolled out alone before dawn. He preferred it that way. Most SAR vets did. Too many voices created confusion. Too many rookies panicked when the woods got strange. And the woods always got strange eventually. But this wasn't strange. This felt wrong in a way Wayne couldn't name. The kind of wrong his father used to sense right before weather turned deadly or elk herds scattered for no visible reason. The kind of wrong that made animals disappear. His dad had vanished in mountains like these. 11 years ago, October, just like now, went out to check on a hunting party that never radioed back. Found the camp tent still standing, gear untouched, fire cold, no bodies, no blood, no tracks leading away, just silence. They'd searched for 3 weeks. Never found him. Never found any of them. Wayne became a ranger 6 months later, became SAR a year after that, because somebody had to go into the quiet places, somebody had to bring people home, even if it was just their bodies. Even if it meant walking into the same silence that took his old man. He took a few steps down the trail, boots crunching through the top layer of frost. Muscle memory took over, eyes scanning for broken branches, disturbed snow, anything out of pattern. 4 minutes in, he stopped. His foot hovered above a patch of powder. He pressed down. Crunch. Except not exactly. He felt the snow compress under his boot, felt the vibration travel up through his leg, but the sound didn't fully form. The air was swallowing it. Wayne crouched, pulled off his glove, pressed his bare hand into the snow. Nothing. Just faint vibration against his palm. No whisper of ice crystals shifting. No sound at all. What the hell? He stood slowly, scanned the tree line. Everything looked normal enough. Pine needles glinting with frost, sunlight cutting through in dusty shafts, but silence in the mountains was never good. Predators hunting, storm fronts building, avalanche zones getting ready to let go. His instincts screamed turn back, radio for a bigger team. But those hikers were still out here somewhere. And silence killed slower than cold, but it killed just the same. Wayne pushed deeper. The farther he hiked, the heavier the quiet became. At first it felt like fresh snowfall, that natural muffling. Another quarter-mile and it started feeling wrong, dense, pressing in on him. Around 8 to 10, he reached the switchback overlooking the small ravine. That's when he saw the mule deer. It lay half buried in drifted powder, body twisted slightly left. Frost coated its hide, nothing unusual for a cold night. But as Wayne got closer, the details lifted the hair on his forearms. The eyes had burst. They weren't clawed out, not pecked by birds, burst like the pressure inside the skull had spiked. The ears were mottled purple-black. The blood was frozen in thin streaks down the neck. The tongue hung swollen and dark. Even the hooves looked wrong, forced into unnatural angles. Wayne knelt beside the carcass, his breath fogged in the air, but he heard nothing, not even the faint hiss of exhaling. Pressure change, disease, toxin, nothing fit. He reached out, touched the hide. The forest swallowed the soft rustle of fur. He should have heard the slightest creak when he nudged the frozen limbs. Instead, nothing. The quiet had become complete. He straightened. The pulse was thumping faster inside his skull, but he couldn't hear it. A wave of nausea rolled through him like his ears were clogged at altitude. He checked his radio, tapped it. Not a crackle, not a hiss. Dead. Another step forward and the transition hit him like walking through a physical wall. Wayne froze. He stepped back instinctively, then forward again. Same effect. A boundary, invisible, sharp. Inside the boundary, the world became mute. Outside, faint wind through trees, the whisper of snow shifting, the low hum of distant forest life. Inside, absolute void. He backed up to the safe side and pulled out his notebook, marking the location. He shouldn't go in. He knew better. Silence like this wasn't natural, and the deer's ruptured eye suggested something pressure-related, possibly lethal. But those hikers... His dad's face flickered through his mind, the empty camp, the cold fire, the silence. Wayne swallowed hard, tightened the chest strap of his pack, and stepped across the threshold. Sound vanished instantly. It wasn't like deafness. He could still hear inside his head, heartbeat, breath, thoughts, but they were faint, wrong, hollow. His boots left prints in the powder, but the snow didn't crunch. His jacket didn't rustle. Even his breathing made no noise. He felt weight in the silence, like the air itself was thickening, like the forest had become a sealed room. Wayne exhaled slowly and walked deeper. As he moved through the trees, the quiet shifted from eerie to oppressive. His skull buzzed faintly. His heartbeat felt amplified, vibrating through every nerve. Then a gust of wind hit his face. But he couldn't hear it, couldn't hear the pines sway, couldn't hear anything. Up ahead, something flickered between the trees, a pale shape slipping behind a trunk. Wayne froze. Another glimpse movement drifting through the tree line, slow, deliberate. He adjusted his flashlight and flicked it on. No click, no hum, no sound. The beam cut through the white haze, slicing across trunks and low branches. Nothing there. But Wayne's instincts screamed, not nothing. Something watched him, something big. He moved forward cautiously, sweeping the light. He saw no tracks, yet something massive had passed through here. The snow was disturbed in wide, heavy drags. Then he found the first hiker. The woman sat propped against a tree, one hand resting on her thigh, head tipped slightly to the side as if listening to something. Snow had dusted her face lightly, but she wasn't frozen solid. Frost haloed her hair, her lashes. Her eyes were open, wide, bloodshot, unmoving. Wayne knelt beside her and pressed 2 fingers to her neck. No pulse, but the skin was still warm. He leaned closer. The mouth was parted slightly. When he looked inside, he saw that her tongue had swollen, pushing against her teeth. The eardrums had ruptured, blood crusted black inside both canals. Then he saw the marks on her wrist. Small punctures, 4 of them, arranged in a pattern that wasn't from any animal he knew. The skin around the wounds looked wrong, discolored, almost translucent, like the flesh had started to separate from the muscle beneath. Wayne's breath thinned. He stood, scanned the woods. Then something trembled the snow. Not sound, vibration. Footfalls, heavy ones. They approached from deeper in the forest, but in absolute silence. Wayne only felt them as tiny tremors beneath his boots. He slowly lifted the flashlight. The beam passed over black pine trunks, white drifts, gnarled branches, until it hit a shape. A tall shape, thin, wrong. It stood between the trees about 40 yards away, almost blending with the trunks. The skin was pale to the point of translucence, stretched tight across long limbs that bent at unnatural angles. The torso was elongated, ribs sharp beneath the skin. Frost clung to the joints like crystallized sap. The head tipped sideways, a neck too long, a jaw too narrow. Where a mouth should have been was a gash vertical, splitting upward to the lower half of its face. From that gash, a faint red mist drifted outward like breath. But the creature made no sound at all, not even when it moved. Wayne froze. The creature's head snapped toward him impossibly fast, a blur of movement that created no noise, only a shift in the air. 2 sunken black pits focused on him. The red mist curled like smoke in cold wind. Wayne's pulse thundered, vibrating through his chest. The creature stepped forward. No crunch, no thud, just silent approach. Multiple eyes opened across its torso, 8, maybe 10, blinking independently. They tracked his movements, watched him from every angle. Wayne slowly backed away, boots trembling the snow beneath him. The creature tilted its head again, studying his movement, sensing the vibration of his footsteps. One of its arms split. Not broke split. The limbs separated into 2 thinner appendages, each ending in something that looked like fingers but moved like tendrils. Wayne turned and ran. But running made vibrations. Running attracted it. He forced himself to sprint lightly careful steps, barely touching the ground even though adrenaline begged him to tear through the forest at full speed. Each step he took, he felt the creature's steps behind him, faster, closer, still silent. Branches whipped his face, his breath hammered, his heart rattled his ribs, the air thickened, pressing against his ears. He reached the edge of the silent zone, recognized the boundary instantly, and lunged through. Sound slammed back into him like a punch. Wind roared in the pines, snow hissed off branches, his breath erupted in ragged gasps. He dropped to his knees, clutching his head as dizziness blurred the world. Behind him, inside the muted zone, the creature stopped. It didn't cross. It stood just inside the invisible line, body half obscured by the haze. The red mist drifted lazily from its mouth slit. Watching him, waiting. Wayne crawled backward on hands and knees until he could stand. The creature leaned forward as though pushing against an invisible barrier. The eyes across its torso blinked in sequence, the split arm reformed tendrils weaving back together into a single limb. Then it slowly retreated into the trees, disappearing into the red-tinted hush. Wayne stood there, chest heaving, hands shaking. He'd seen a lot in 17 years of SAR work. Bears, mountain lions, Hypothermia victims who'd stripped naked in the final stages of freezing to death, bodies that had been in the wilderness for weeks. But he'd never seen anything like that, and it had looked at him with his father's eyes. By late afternoon, the wind had shifted. Storm clouds dragged themselves across the peaks, bruised purple and heavy with snow. Wayne stood beside his truck at the trailhead, staring up at the ridge where the silent boundary lay hidden. He'd left the woman's body where it was against every instinct he had because dragging her out by himself would have been suicide. Whatever lived in that dead zone had moved like a ghost, like a shadow given bones and hunger. He needed more gear, more light, more protection, and every ounce of courage he had left. He packed methodically, fingers cold but steady, rope, thermal blankets, extra batteries, flares, a compact emergency sled, and his father's old hunting knife, not because he expected it to help, but because carrying it felt like carrying a piece of home. The handle was worn smooth from his dad's grip. Wayne had found it in the garage after the disappearance, sitting on the workbench next to a half-empty can of gun oil. He carried it on every SAR call since. When he radioed the SAR base, the signal crackled with static. The operator responded faintly. "Copy that." Stetson storm rolling in. "Need backup?" "No," Wayne said. "Not yet. Hold the line for 30 more. If I don't call back, send everyone." Understood. He switched off the radio, took a steadying breath, and started back up the trail. The hike toward the ridge felt different now. Not just the silence, though he could feel where it began, like a bruise on the landscape, but the forest itself. The pines seemed to lean inward, branches knitted tight overhead as the storm dimmed the world to a blue-gray gloom. He crossed the threshold again. Sound died. Not faded, died. His breath became a dry vibration. His boots made no noise. His heart dulled into a slow, heavy pulse behind his ribs. The forest floor was littered with pine needles that should have whispered underfoot. Instead, they gave no feedback at all. The pressure on his skull was worse this time, like altitude sickness, like air too thick to breathe. Wayne swallowed down the rising panic and forced himself forward. The boundary behind him vanished into gray haze. The world turned soft around the edges, details blurring. He clicked his headlamp on the light shone, but the switch made no sound. He moved carefully, scanning trees and snow. This time, he caught details he'd missed in his panic earlier. Massive drag marks across the snow, circular divots where something heavy had stepped, trees with patches of bark rubbed off at shoulder height far higher than any elk. And something else. Small pieces of fabric caught on branches, red fleece, the male hiker's jacket. Wayne followed the marks deeper. The second hiker was less than a mile from where the woman had died. He was on his hands and knees, slumped forward in the snow. Breath frosted the air in front of him, alive barely. His face was pale blue. Frost clung to his eyebrows, lashes, and beard. Blood crusted around his ears, frozen in jagged streaks. Wayne dropped to his knees beside him and lifted the man's chin gently. No response. The man's mouth formed a silent scream, lips stretched, jaw trembling. He was trying to make sound, any sound, but nothing came out. Every muscle in his face strained, cords in his neck taut. Then Wayne saw the marks. The man's left arm was covered in them, small punctures running from wrist to elbow. The skin around each wound had turned translucent, almost see-through. Wayne could see the muscle fibers beneath, could see them moving, separating, reforming. The flesh was being woven into something else. Wayne wrapped the man in a thermal blanket and felt for a pulse. Weak, fast, erratic. The man's eyes rolled toward Wayne, pupils dilated, tears froze at the corners. "It's okay," Wayne whispered, though he knew the man couldn't hear him. "I've got you. I'm gonna get you out." He hoisted the man onto the emergency sled, cinched him in tight with straps, and began dragging him toward the boundary. The sled glided silently. Snow kicked up behind it with no sound. Wayne's breath grew harsher, chest tight. His head throbbed. The lack of noise made his thoughts echo strangely, bouncing around in his skull like distant voices. Keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. He had to keep him alive. He wasn't leaving another body in these woods. He felt the vibration before he saw it. Heavy, measured, slow, coming from behind. Wayne didn't turn around. He kept pulling the sled. But the tremors grew stronger, something massive walking over frozen ground, each footfall sending faint shivers through the powder. Wayne forced himself not to look. Instead, he shifted his weight and pulled faster, legs burning as he trudged uphill through knee-deep drifts. A second vibration, then a third, then a fourth closer now. The creature was following him, tracking him, matching his pace, closing the distance with every step he took. Wayne dared a glance over his shoulder. At first he saw nothing, just the blur of trees and snow. Then the shape moved. It stepped into view between two pines, tall enough that its shoulders brushed branches as it walked. The elongated limbs swayed with each step, joints bending subtly the wrong direction. The torso, gaunt and pale, flexed with a sickening ripple each time it leaned forward. The eyes across its chest were all open now, watching him, blinking in waves. The head hung slightly to the left. The neck was far too long. The mouth slit gaped, pulsing faint red mist with each silent breath. It was listening for him, searching for vibration, tasting the air for movement. Wayne turned back toward the trail and forced his breath calm. He pulled the sled carefully now, each step controlled, every muscle trembling with the effort of keeping quiet. The creature's head twitched. It stepped faster. Wayne gritted his teeth and increased pace. The sled slid silently behind him. The creature closed the gap. 20 yards. 15. 10. Don't run. Don't run. Don't run. Running created vibration. Running attracted it. He knew it instinctively, the same way prey knows when a predator hunts by sound rather than sight. Wayne forced himself into a near jog, each step soft as he could manage, muscles burning, sweat freezing on his neck. The creature matched him step for step, one of its arms extended, reaching forward, fingers splitting into tendrils that writhed like living things. The world blurred, trees flickered past, snow swirled in the vacuum. And then, Wayne saw the faint shimmer ahead. The air thickened, sound teased the edge of return. The boundary. He put everything he had into the last 20 yards. The creature lunged, silent arms stretching unnaturally forward. The tendrils reached for him, tips brushing the back of his jacket. Wayne hurled himself across the invisible line. Sound detonated around him. The wind roared. Branches cracked. His own gasp exploded from his throat like a cannon blast. The sled skidded loudly across the snow. Wayne collapsed beside it, coughing, ears ringing. The creature stood on the other side in the silent zone body, half obscured by the haze. It leaned forward as though pushing against the barrier, but it would not cross. The man on the sled convulsed violently. His scream tore through the mountains, a hoarse, strangled sound that made Wayne's blood freeze. The hiker's voice had returned all at once, and the shock of it ripped through his throat. Blood poured from his mouth. Wayne tried to hold him still. "It's okay, I've got you. Stay with me, stay with me." The hiker screamed louder. His left arm spasmed. The translucent patches of skin began to tear, not ripping, separating along invisible seams. The muscle beneath pulled apart in thin strands, reforming into patterns that weren't human. The man's fingers stretched, bones cracked. The hand split down the middle, each half forming into something with too many joints. Wayne held him down, but the man thrashed with inhuman strength. "Stay awake. Look at me." The hiker's eyes rolled back. His screams faded into wet, ragged breaths. The flesh on his arm continued to separate, weaving itself into thin membranes connected by strands that looked like translucent rope. His chest heaved once, twice, then nothing. The body sagged against the sled, half transformed. The left arm hung limp, fingers still twitching as the tissue finished reforming. Wayne knelt there, chest heaving, tears freezing on his face. He'd lost them both, but something worse settled in his bones. Behind them, inside the red mist silence, the creature tilted its head. Then something impossible happened. A sound emerged from the creature, not from outside, not from its throat, but like a memory bleeding into reality. A whisper, faint, crushed, mangled. A single word, barely audible over the wind. Wayne. Wayne froze. His heart stopped. The creature leaned closer, black eyes fixed directly on him. Wayne. It spoke in his father's voice. Wayne stumbled backward, dragging the sled farther away from the boundary until the creature vanished into the deepening fog. Snow began to fall, real snow, whispering through the pines, and sound returned fully, loud and chaotic. Wayne stared at the place where the creature had stood. It had learned his name, learned his history, learned the one voice that could stop him cold. And it had spoken across a divide where sound shouldn't exist. The thing wasn't just hunting. It was collecting, integrating, learning. He had to go back. Not tomorrow, not later. Tonight, before the storm sealed the forest in, before the silence spread any farther, before that thing learned more than his name. Snow hammered the ridge as night fell. The storm rolled over the mountains like a living thing, a dark, shuddering beast swallowing the sky. By the time Wayne reached his truck again, the windshield was coated in ice, and the world had narrowed to a tunnel of white. The hiker's body lay still in the sled, covered with a tarp. Wayne strapped it down in the truck bed with trembling hands. The man's final scream rang in his ears. Not because of the volume, but because it was the only sound Wayne had heard in hours that wasn't his own breath. The partially transformed arm hung limp beneath the tarp, fingers still twitching, still reforming. He slammed the tailgate shut and leaned against it, head bowed. He'd lost two good people today, and something in that silent zone knew his name, knew his fear, knew his father's voice. He should have waited for backup, should have called in the Rangers, should have done what protocol dictated. But Wayne Stetson wasn't built for protocol. He was built for mountains, for bad weather, for facing things no one else would. His dad had taught him that, taught him to walk into the quiet places, to bring people home, even if home was just a body bag. Wayne grabbed more gear, 2 lamps, a flare gun, the long-range radio unit, and a pack of road flares, then slung his pack over his shoulder. He stared up at the ridge. Snow fell harder. Wind screamed through the tree line, but he walked anyway. The storm swallowed him whole. The trail had changed. Entire sections of the forest seemed rearranged. Fallen logs were in new places. Branches hung lower. Rock outcroppings pointed in different directions. Wayne stopped more than once to blink away the disorientation. The mountains didn't move, not like this. But the storm pushed him on, wind howling through the trees. It felt like the forest was trying to keep him out, or funnel him in. By the time he reached the silent boundary again, the world was pitch black except for his headlamp beam, a thin, flickering cone of white swallowed by the blizzard. Wayne stepped forward, and sound died. Instant vacuum, instant pressure, instant terror. He felt the silence slam into him like he'd stepped into a sealed room. The snow fell noiselessly now, flakes drifting in eerie, slow motion. His boots crunched through drifts with no sound. The storm outside became a memory. Wayne tightened his grip on his flashlight. He wasn't going back without answers. The silent field was wider, much wider, at least twice the size it had been that morning. His stomach dropped. If this thing kept spreading, if the void grew mile by mile, what would be left of the mountains, of sound, of life? His head throbbed, the pressure built behind his ears. The silence felt alive, a presence pushing against him from all sides. He stopped, not because he wanted to, because something inside the silence shifted. A ripple passed through the snow, a tremor, then another faster closing in. Wayne spun the flashlight. At first he saw nothing. Then the red mist drifted between the trees, faint, pulsing, alive. He raised the light higher, and something stepped into view. The creature emerged slowly, as though the act of moving through the silent corridor took effort. The long limbs flexed, bending slightly backward at the elbows. Frost clung to the pale skin in patches that flaked away with each step. The torso was lean, starved-looking, ribs sharp under the stretched flesh. But the head had changed. It had elongated into something that wasn't human anymore. The jaw had split vertically through bone and cartilage. The mouth gash pulsed like a second heartbeat, wider now, deeper. Each pulse released more red mist that hung in the air like fog. And the eyes, dozens of them now, covering the torso, the shoulders, even parts of the neck. They blinked in waves, watching Wayne from every angle at once. Wayne stumbled back. The creature followed. No sound, only vibrations. The ground trembled beneath each step, a faint, rhythmic signal. Wayne realized what it was doing. It wasn't hunting. It was locating him by measuring how the earth vibrated under his weight. A predator evolved for silence. It tilted its head again. The eyes flickered with a faint red glow. Wayne's flashlight flickered in response. And then the creature's mouth opened wider. The red mist poured out in a thick cloud, drifting toward him. He stumbled back, choking even though it produced no smell, no taste. The mist wrapped around him, clinging to his coat, seeping into the fabric. And then he heard it. A whisper, inside his skull. Wayne. Not spoken aloud, not carried through air, vibrated directly into his bones. His stomach twisted, his vision blurred. Memories flickered, fishing with his father, building the cabin, quiet nights by the wood stove. And then a memory he didn't own. A cave, a dark pool, something rising from the water, screaming with no sound. A woman's face pressed against translucent membrane, eyes wide, mouth open, still aware. The creature's memory. The woman hiker. Her consciousness trapped inside the thing's flesh. Wayne staggered back, breaking the connection. The red mist curled away as though displeased, drifting back toward its host. The creature took another step, then another. Then it lunged. Wayne ran. Not soft, not careful, full sprint. The creature followed, silent as death, fast enough to splinter trees when it pushed off from them. Wayne heard nothing, but he felt everything. The vibration of branches breaking, the tremor of enormous limbs driving into snow, the faint shift of air as it closed the gap. He fired a flare over his shoulder. The red light burst in a silent explosion, casting the creature in brilliant crimson. It was right behind him. Arms outstretched, tendrils splitting from the fingers, reaching for him, mouth gash wide, red mist whipping around it like a shroud. The eyes across its torso were all focused on him, watching, tracking. Wayne dove sideways, rolling through snow. The creature barreled past and slammed into a pine, shuddering the entire trunk without a sound. Wayne scrambled up, heart pounding like a war drum. Another flare fired directly at the creature. This one hit. The flare sizzled against its chest, burning bright red. The creature didn't scream, couldn't scream, but the entire body spasmed, limbs contorting. The red mist flashed white-hot as the fire reacted. The translucent skin blackened where the flare burned, cracking like dried mud. Beneath the skin, Wayne saw movement. Faces. Human faces pressed against the membrane from inside, mouths open, eyes wide, dozens of them, layered beneath the surface. All still aware. All still screaming silently. Wayne bolted. He had maybe seconds. He needed higher ground. Wayne skidded to a stop. Ahead of him, the forest had changed shape again. Where the trail should have been, a chasm opened a huge fissure in the earth, wide enough to swallow a small car. It hadn't been there earlier. Wayne's breath hitched. The creature's presence throbbed behind him. He had one option. He backed up, sprinted forward, and jumped. The world tilted. Snow fell upward. Blackness swallowed sound. Wayne hit the bottom hard, rolling through loose gravel and snow. His vision flashed white. Pain shot up his arm as he grabbed for balance. His flashlight flew from his hand and shattered. He lay there for a moment, gasping silently. When he stood, the fissure walls loomed above him. The creature stood at the edge, staring down, unable to reach him yet. The red mist drifted over the lip of the chasm and began to fall, curling downward like smoke trapped in reverse gravity. Wayne stumbled backward. The fissure wasn't natural. The walls weren't shaped like rock. They were shaped like scar tissue, smooth, organic, pulsing faintly. The silence wasn't spreading. It was eating. The earth had ruptured where sound died like the land itself was rejecting reality. Wayne followed the fissure deeper, boots sliding on smooth surfaces. The deeper he went, the warmer the air became. The red mist thickened. And then he saw it. At the bottom of the chasm lay a pit. A perfectly circular depression. The walls were smooth, seamless, pulsing faintly. In the center, a pool of thick, dark liquid. Soundless, still, except it wasn't water. It was membrane, a living organ. And the creature wasn't alone. Two more pale figures knelt at the pool's edge, bodies contorted, heads bent low. Their skin had the same translucent quality, the same layered faces beneath the surface. When Wayne stepped closer, their heads snapped toward him in perfect sync. Eyes black, mouth slits closed, skin stretched. More scouts, more hunters. Wayne staggered backward, fumbling for his flare gun, but as he raised it, the membrane pool rippled. Something moved beneath it. Something huge. A shape rising from the liquid darkness, tall, thin, long limbs unfolding like draped cloth, a skull-like head emerging, mouth slit gaping open as the red mist pulsed out in rhythmic bursts. The thing was massive, at least 12 feet tall. The limbs were impossibly long. The torso was covered in hundreds of eyes, all blinking independently. Wayne froze, horror sinking deep into his bones. The creature above the one he'd been fighting wasn't the apex. It was the scout, the void's child. This thing, this towering skeletal horror, was the mother, the source, the origin of the silence. And it was waking up. The membrane pool shuddered. The red mist burst outward in a shock wave that knocked Wayne off his feet. His ears filled with pressure, his vision warped. The kneeling scouts rose. The fissure walls pulsed. The mother tilted its head. The mouth gash widened, revealing layers of throat. The mist poured out like blood. Wayne scrambled backward, pulling the flare gun. The mother creature stepped out of the pool. The membrane clung to its legs, stretching like skin, then snapping back into place. Each footstep sent tremors through the earth strong enough that Wayne felt them in his teeth. The two scouts flanked it, moving in perfect synchronization, heads tilted at the same angle, eyes blinking in the same sequence. They were extensions of it, parts of the same organism. Wayne fired the flare gun. The first flare hit the membrane pool dead center. For a fraction of a second, nothing happened. Then, the pit ignited. Red light erupted, illuminating the chasm in violent color. Flames crawled across the membrane like gasoline on water, burning upward, catching on the scout's legs. The fire spread fast, consuming the organic walls, racing toward the mother creature. The scouts convulsed, their skin split open. The faces trapped beneath the membrane screamed silently as the fire consumed them. They collapsed into ash and bone, bodies dissolving into red mist that burned away into nothing. The mother creature recoiled. For a moment, a fraction of a second, a scream tore through the void. A real scream, agonized, ear-splitting, world-shattering. The silent field blew apart like shattering glass. Sound rushed back violently. Wayne fell. The fissure walls cracked. Rock and earth tumbled down. The scout's remains scattered into ash. The mother creature shrieked again, voice no longer muted, a horrifying, multi-layered wail. And the sound was wrong. Too many voices at once. Too many frequencies. Human voices layered beneath it, screaming in unison. All the people it had consumed. All the minds it had integrated, all still aware. Wayne scrambled up the collapsing slope. Rocks fell, snow tumbled. The chasm quaked as the creature thrashed. He climbed, hands bleeding, legs shaking, breath raw. He reached the top. Behind him, the mother creature's final scream ripped through the mountains, a sound so massive it split the air. Then silence. Real silence. Heavy. Normal. The snowstorm swallowed it. Wayne collapsed on the ridge as the fissure sealed behind him, snow drifting over the cracked earth. The red mist was gone. The vibrations were gone. The creature was gone. But as he lay there, chest heaving, he heard something faint on the wind. A whisper. Weak. Breaking apart. Wayne. His father's voice. But not from the creature. Not from the chasm. From deep inside the forest farther north beyond the ridge. Where the silence had spread earlier. Where something else now waited. The wind shifted. The snow hissed. And Wayne Stetson realized the truth. He hadn't destroyed the source. He'd only destroyed the nest. The silence wasn't gone. It was moving. Growing, hunting, and somewhere in these mountains, another mother was waking up. Another membrane pool was forming. Another generation of scouts was being born. The creature had learned his name, learned his father's voice, and now somewhere out there in the dark it was using that voice to call him deeper, to lure him in, to add him to the collection. Wayne stood slowly. Blood dripped from his hands. His ears still rang from the creature's death scream. The storm hammered down around him. He looked north, toward the voice, toward the darkness, toward whatever was waiting. And he started walking, not because he wanted to, because somebody had to, because that's what his father would have done, because some silences needed to be broken, even if it meant becoming part of them. The forest swallowed him. The snow fell, and deep in the mountains, something whispered his name again. Waiting, learning, weaving, folklore note, The phenomenon documented in Wayne Stetson's final recorded transmission, later designated as Resonance Void Events by the National Park Service, has been observed in 17 locations across the Northern Rockies since 2008. Indigenous communities in the region, particularly Blackfeet, Salish, and Kootenai peoples, have long maintained oral traditions regarding the places where sound goes to die. Elders speak of entities that live between vibrations, that hunt by sensing disturbances in the silence. They describe beings that wear the flesh of the consumed, that learn voices and memories, that call to the living with stolen words. The traditional warning is simple. When the forest goes quiet, you're already too late. The silence doesn't spread from a source. It spreads through consumption. Each victim becomes part of the network. Each integrated consciousness extends the void's reach. Wayne Stetson's body was never recovered. His final radio transmission, recorded at 22:47 hours on October 19th, consisted of a single sentence spoken in a voice that wasn't his own. "Dad, is that you?" The transmission ended with the sound of footsteps walking away from the microphone, into the quiet, into the red. Search and rescue teams refused to enter the northern quadrant of the park. The silence zone there now spans over 40 square miles and continues to expand at a rate of approximately 1 mile per year. Local rangers have reported hearing voices in the woods, familiar voices, voices of the missing. They don't respond anymore. They know better. Because in the mountains, when something knows your name, when it speaks in a voice you've spent years trying to forget, you have two choices. Walk away and live with the guilt, or walk toward the voice and become part of the silence. Wayne Stetson made his choice. 17 other rangers have made the same choice since. Their names are carved on a memorial plaque at the park entrance. But sometimes, late at night, visitors report hearing those names whispered on the wind, calling, beckoning, weaving new victims into the red silence. The forest remembers, and what the forest remembers, it keeps. Forever. Well, boys and ghouls, that wraps up another terrorific tale from the vault. Wayne, damn, Wayne. You walked right into the silence just like Daddy did. Heard that voice calling from the darkness and couldn't help himself. And now he's part of the collection, part of the membrane. One more face pressed against the flesh, one more voice in the chorus. His consciousness woven into something that hunts by vibration and speaks with stolen tongues. Just how we love it. If this story crawled under your skin the right way, hit that subscribe button. New creature features drop every day, and trust me, tomorrow's even nastier. Leave a like if you'll never trust silence in the mountains again, and drop a comment. Where are you watching from? What cryptid haunts your neck of the woods? Ever experienced a silence that felt wrong? I'm always hunting for the next nightmare. Remember, when the forest goes quiet, you're already being hunted. Until next time, kiddies, keep your fires burning and your eyes on the trees. This has been your late night creature feature. I'm Mr. Wendigo, and the silence is always spreading.